In this question, we need to write the equations that represent the transformation that happens from function 1 to function 2. In part A, function 1 is the parent function of a quadratic function, so I'm going to use the vertex form of a parabola to create that equation that we need. So I'm going to start off by writing y equals, and the first variable we need to add something in for is a. And a controls how much or how wider or narrower that parabola is from function 1 to function 2. And if you could look, it doesn't seem like it got wider or even more narrower. It looks like it stayed the same, so we're going to keep a as 1. And because it's 1, we don't even have to write it. We could treat it like an invisible 1. And then we're going to go with x, and now we have to start writing our h, and our h is the x variable of our vertex, so we need to figure out where our vertex moved from function 1 to function 2. Now our vertex started off in the origin of our first function, right? Our origin is 0, 0, and that's where the vertex was. Well, function 2 looks like it shifted over to the right 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So the h value is going to be 4. And then it shifted up 1, 2, 3 times. So it looks like the k value is going to be 3. So the vertex of function 2 is going to be 4, 3, and that's right there. So back to my equation, I have x, and we're going to subtract. And then we're going to add our 3. And that's going to be the vertex form of our function number 2. And that takes into account the transformation. For part B, we're going to use the same technique. We're going to use the vertex form of our parabola. It looks like function 1 is the parent function again, and we want to figure out what happened to function 2. So let's go ahead and start writing our equation down here. And we need to plug something in for our a this time because our parabola flipped. And whenever it flips, we need to make that a value negative. That signifies that there was a flip that happened. And do we need to change that number? I don't think so, because it didn't seem like the parabola got wider or narrower. It stayed about the same distance, so we could keep that as a negative in front. Then we'll move on to x, and we want to subtract our h value. So it looks like we moved all the way to our left 5 times, and we also shifted down 1 time. So our vertex has an x value of -5 and the k value of -1. That's going to be my vertex. So now we need to plug that information into our vertex form down here. So we're going to subtract our h value, and that was a -5. And then we're going to add our k value, and that was a -1. But now we want to clean this up a little bit. We start by writing y equals negative, and now if we're subtracting a negative number, we could change that to addition. And if we're adding a negative number, we could just change that to subtraction. So this is going to be the equation that represents the transformation from function 1 to function 2. And one quick tip is that when you're plugging in an h value, you probably don't have to do this step right here. Because we're subtracting our h value, we could always take the opposite sign of our h, or our x of our vertex. So since it was a -5, we could have just went ahead and plugged in a +5. That's okay. And then same thing with our k value. We want to keep that sign, so we could have just done a subtraction of 1 instead of doing adding a negative. But that's the final answer.